So, hello everyone. I've got a rather strange title for you. I hope you recognize Restoring Abrahamic Faith Again for the First Time. So, it's intentionally confusing and crazy. And I've got a slide to show you something about part of the confusion. So, this is a slide of from July 1991. It was in the United Nations building in the offices of the foreign correspondents upstairs. And I put 35 years ago because I started writing the document that I'm showing David Horowitz. That's David, a younger James Tabor. And this is actually the document right here. This is actually the copy, the very copy that I'm handing David. And how do I know that? Because he wrote on it here. And once he passed away, Ross and I and Dennis Jones went up to his apartment and we cleared everything out. And this was one of the treasures I found. And the reason I wanted to show you this is not only that my project started as a 40-page pamphlet, here it is, 40 pages, but David wrote on it. He always did this in his characteristic handwriting. And you probably can't see that, but it starts out with that final sentence in bold. I'll read it to you. And I just get such a kick out of this. It is absolutely non-denominational. I'm talking about Abrahamic faith. It is not represented by any church or religious organization of which I'm aware. And he wrote, except UIWU. See, I was just meeting him, and I was trying to do something like I'm trying to do today that's essentially right from the Bible. And he wrote that all the way through. Anytime I would say, this is unique, this is individual, except for UIW. So I agree with him, actually. The next slide, if we can see it. These are three versions that you can see. You see them dated. So there's that little pamphlet over there at the top on the left, 1991. And then it became a 100-page spiral bound. And then finally it became a published book, as you can see. And on May 16th, which happens to be Lag BaOmer, which means 33, it's just a date that I like, and I picked it as a symbolic date. It's on the Jewish calendar as well as the Gregorian calendar. It will come out with this similar cover, but Daniel Wright has redesigned the cover and colorized it, and it's still got the same title, but it's essentially a fourth edition and very much revised. So that's the again part that I want to talk about, restoring Abrahamic faith again, and explain to you what I'm talking about. One more slide, just as propaganda. I've got another book coming out. It's not till September 30th, and there is the actual book. This is just a bound galley copy. Many of you know about this, The Lost Mary, Rediscovering the Mother of Jesus. As far as I know, this is the first time anybody's tried to do a quest for the historical Mary. You know, Schweitzer inaugurated the quest for the historical Jesus back in the 1920s. But this is for Mary as a Jewish woman with a large family and influencing the movement as a matriarch. So I hope you'll look forward to that. And I'll get started with my version of restoring Abrahamic faith right now, in our own time, in our own place. I'm glad that David Tyler, I caught most of his talk, said what he said. We do not coordinate, and it's going to sound like we do. But what David gave yesterday is a kind of intro to what I'm going to do from the Bible. Now, how can that be? I mean, I know he talked about the Bible, but it was very philosophical, very scientific. And I got my notes here, and I didn't know what David was going to say. And I put René Descartes, 1637, the French philosopher. You know the Latin. cogito ergo sum, but in English, we all learned it growing up, I think. I think, therefore I am. That for me is the beginning of Abrahamic faith. No matter what I think, even if I think what I think is a dream or an illusion, I can't doubt the I that's thinking it and having the dream or illusion. So, what Descartes rather simply but brilliantly said, and profound things are often simple, aren't they? He said, I can doubt anything. I can doubt everything. I can doubt my own senses, but I can't doubt myself, the doubter. How do I get out of that? Now, what does that mean? It means that as an individual self, you're equipped to follow the path of Abrahamic faith. All you need is your inner self. And I want to then get into the text of the Hebrew Bible and show how that is, in fact, the case. I'm trying to, I have some notes on the screen and I'll put them over to the side if you don't mind me glancing over occasionally. So let me start this way. And this could be disputed, but I want to begin this way. There are three areas of truth: scientific truth, historical truth, and I'm going to add moral truth, the truth about what we should be. Now, some would say, well, that's not a truth, that's a cultural thing, it's relative. I think the way we're made is very reflective of something embedded in us that is essentially the image of God, the creator. Therefore, I think that's also one of the three truths. If you think about the big questions, origins, how did I get here? Or how did we get here as a people? Story, what is my story? That's history. And paths, how should I live? What path should I take? You see those three truths echoed, those quests for truth. Now, one of the things people get confused on, sincerity and passion, utter conviction do not necessarily equal truth. People obviously are sincerely and passionately committed to many, many things that they think are true, and they're not true. But conversely, if you're on a quest for truth, really real truth, scientific, historical, and moral, putting them together, you're going to have sincere passion. You're not going to find it. The Bible talks about seeking after him, so to speak. And it's actually a verb, to pursue, to run after, radaf. So sincerity doesn't guarantee it, but you are going to have that sincere passion if you're ever going to find it. Now, restoring Abrahamic faith implies some kind of a loss or damage or alteration or even repudiation. Why would you need to restore something if it's out there? You basically just need to kind of locate it. But the problem is when I do the historical landscape of thought, as I'm able to do it as a historian, because I work mostly on history, not science or moral truth, I don't find that landscape populated with much that I could recommend. I'm trying to figure out something here. Hold on. Okay. I'm seeing some things on my screen that have to do with my notes. I'm going to get rid of them. Sorry about that. We're doing this for the first time, so. Okay, so what I think about this then, restoring Abrahamic faith or Abrahamic truth, I could even call it. If you look at the landscape, you've got historic Christianity. Let's call it Nicene Christianity. These are the three Abrahamic faiths. Essentially Talmudic or Pharisaic Judaism. Now I know Judaism can have varieties, and even in the United States we have three or four different kind of movements or sometimes called denominations of Judaism. But they're heavily influenced by the Pharisees and Talmudic Judaism and the kind of Judaism that survived the Second Temple period in 70. And then you've got Islam. And if it's fundamentalist Islam, it's kind of a very literal reading of the Quran. So I'm going to argue or say, or actually just put forth, I hope I can argue it, that none of those three paths are representative of Abrahamic faith. Now, that's kind of striking to say if you think about it. Am I putting down those religions? Am I saying they're worthless? Am I saying all the people who adhere to them are wrong and deceived? We just had the funeral of the Pope this week. All Catholics are wrong, all Muslims are wrong. Now, what I'm saying is restoring Abrahamic faith would involve none of those paths. It's actually quite different than that, as I understand it, at least from the records that we have, the oldest records that we have of Abrahamic faith. Essentially, the book of Genesis is where you would get started. Now, what is it that these other paths of Abrahamic faith, because they're called the Abrahamic faiths, plural, what is it? And we even have the Abraham Accords politically. What is it about them that they've lost, discarded, maybe even denied, that is fundamental to what I'm going to present as restoring Abrahamic faith again for the first time? Obviously, it's not the first time in history, but I think it's for the first time in terms of our culture. And I want to contribute to that restoration, and I'm going to tell you why. The basic wrong turn, so to speak, left turn, going down the wrong path of all three of these religions, is they began to say, as part of their central affirmation, several things. One is that the world, this created world, is not our home. We're just passing through. Humans are immortal and destined for heaven, which is our true home. And we need a redeemer to rescue us from this dark lower world in which we've fallen by sin and death and take us up to the world of light and life. That's not Abrahamic faith. Abrahamic faith begins in the very first chapter of the Hebrew Bible, where we read that the creation is good, good. I'm reading these. Good, 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 and very good. That was 7. And then the Sabbath follows. So you have these 7 affirmations of good, the last one being very good, so that Abrahamic faith begins with the affirmation that this is a good world that has departed from the Creator, but the product itself, both humanity, history, and the arena in which we live and move and have our being, is good, 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 very good. So if you have a form of the faith that is not that, and that is opposite of that, or that is essentially going against that or denying that, you don't have Abrahamic faith. So let's go to Genesis 1, verse 27. Most of you know these texts, but let's put them together maybe in an inspiring way, maybe a new way. I don't know. So Elohim, notice it's not just God, it's a name. Elohim, the force of all forces, created Adam. Now this is generic, the soil creature is the way I translated it in my translation of Genesis, because it basically means red dirt. So the dirt creature, dirt and soil, I'd rather use soil because of the connotations of dirt. So the force of all forces created the soil creature in his own image. That's Selem. In the image of Elohim, he created him, male and female, he created them. So the number one insight of Abrahamic faith from Genesis 1 is that humans reflect the Creator, that they're made in the image of God. So our essential nature and our thoughts and our reason and our abilities are little gods. But notice, created out of soil. Then we get in chapter 2, the second story of creation from a different source. Then YHVH, the eternal, Jehovah, Yehovah, various ways people say it. But YHVH, the eternal Elohim, formed man, the soul creature, dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living being, is the best translation in English, I think. But literally, in my translation, I said a living breather. It's exactly the same as the term used for the cattle and the creeping things and all oxygenized beings. Even fish are living breathers. They have the breath of life. It's actually physical, biological life. And that living being, Adam, and finally Eve, are told, you are dust, and to dust you will return. You're made of dust, and to dust you will return. Now, if you begin any form of the three great Abrahamic faiths, or even throw Buddhism in, or Hinduism, or any other religion, Taoism, that's not the beginning. Here, the beginning is biological beginning of dust creatures that are temporary, subject to death, subject to decay, subject to corruption. You are dust, and to dust you shall return. That's not a result of any fall. That is from the creation on. Humans are made dust of the earth. That's not a fundamental point of most religions, right? Most religions, certainly the three Abrahamic faiths, would say, no, no, no. You're a divine being. You have an immortal soul. You're trapped in a negative view, or at least you're limited by a physical body, but your destiny is heaven alone. There's a famous Greek, earliest statement of this Greek dualism that I know of. It's that golden tablet. I've talked about it before. And the great confession in that tablet, it's our earliest source for belief in this dualistic immortality of the soul. Dates to about 400 BC, even before Plato. And what you're supposed to say in the underworld is, I am a child of earth and starry heaven, but heaven alone is my home. And that's like saying to a Christian, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. It's like saying for a Muslim, I believe in the one God, Allah, Muhammad is his prophet. Or for a Jew to say the Shema. That's essentially the confession of this Greek Hellenistic view of things that took over Abrahamic faith. Now, with Abrahamic faith is something, let me just fix something. I'm having trouble with my notes, otherwise I'm okay. They're just kind of floating around. So then we go to Abraham. At 75, this is Genesis 12, he's told, Lech Lecha, go. But the person speaking to him says, I am El Shaddai. It's usually translated God Almighty, but it's very close to God who protects you or succors you. The scholars debate what it really means. But shad can mean breast. Shad can also mean to destroy. So one way of seeing this is I am God Almighty, okay, but I also nourish, you're made in my image and I protect you and all of that as well. Walk before me and be perfect, it's often translated, or blameless. And that's the word tamid. It's used a lot of times. Usually it means like not having stains or blemishes or things like that. But it doesn't mean perfect, like without any flaws or weaknesses or anything like that. It actually is giving you the purpose of Abrahamic faith to strive to be like God. Let me give you a passage where the same word is used in the Song of Moses, Deuteronomy 32, verse 4. Here's a quote. The rock, his work is tamid. His work is tamid. It's complete. It's perfect. All his ways are justice, God of faithfulness and without iniquity. Just and right is he. So to walk before me and be tamid is to be like that God, which connects back to made in the image of God. You see the idea. That's the basis of Abrahamic faith. Then Abraham is given a plan in Genesis 12 where these seven things are mentioned, and it has to do with the land, a nation, good blessings coming, and then the world being blessed. That's the plan. My book is divided into who is God, what is the way, and what is the plan. It has those three major divisions. So you can see I'm trying to reflect these ideas and going over them with you today orally. In Numbers 16:22, there's another connection that I think helps, where Moses falls on his face and he says, "O El, God, the power of all, Elohim." And I like that he says, "O El Elohim," not just any El, but El Elohim, the God of all gods, the Elohim of the spirits of all flesh. He's particularly talking about humans here. I'm not one to say God is not the Elohim of the spirits of all creatures, because we all have one breath. But as far as being made in this reflective image of God with self-conscious awareness and the quality of I think, therefore I am, we can debate it, but we certainly have that capability, that godlike capability. But I love that phrase because it implies a connectivity, the Elohim of the spirits of all flesh. So you're already plugged in to the Elohim if you are a human, breathing, thinking human being. You're a living breather, just like an animal of any type, but you have this spirit that's reflective of the Spirit of God. That would be the image idea. And then the plan is revealed in Genesis 18:19. Some of you heard me speak before. Yes, I do mention this probably in most of the time I talk to this group. God's got a decision to make. He's got some plans. You can read the plans in the chapter. I'm not going to go over it now, but here's what I want to emphasize. Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Should I bring Abraham in on the plan? He's talking to himself. It's kind of humorous. And then he goes, no, of course not. I won't. Why? Because the plan is that he's going to become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth are going to get blessed through him. And then he tells you how that works. And we really need this next phrase. For I have known him. It's usually translated chosen, but it's actually yada. I've known him. I put my finger on that guy. That's Abraham. Let's do that with him. That he may charge his children and his household after him to keep the way of Jehovah or Yahweh or YHVH by doing righteousness and justice. Now, that's essentially it. Abraham is chosen, he's connected, he's told to leave Babylon, to leave that culture, that old culture, and walk before me and be what? Hamid, to perfect yourself, to perfect the world, to perfect yourself into what you can be. So suddenly you have this human purpose. People wonder, there's history, and there's myself, and there's all the things that I wonder about. What's it all about, Alfie, kind of thing, if you remember the films. There were two versions of that. So what I want to say here is that this is supranatural, not supernatural. This is S-U-P-R-A. Supranatural, beyond the natural, beyond what would just normally happen by cause and effect. Okay? Because you could trace on a beach a design, a fairly simple design. Try an infinity sign. And I think a billion years of sand washing up would probably not form that sign exactly like you did, just with your naked eye. So it's supranatural. There is the natural world. There are physical laws that operate. They don't create design and patterns. They follow design and patterns, but they don't create them. You can create them. We make things, right? Here's my mouse for my computer. Somebody had to think about that. David was talking about his water bottle when he talked. Pretty simple, but it's really not simple when you think about it. So supranatural, supracultural. I want you to go beyond the culture because every one of us can trace ourselves back and say, I'm an individual, a Homo sapien, you can start that way. And then you can talk about where you were born nationally, and you can talk about your family, your language, your culture, and you can talk about your nation. You can talk about your own personal history. But Abrahamic faith would be above all of that. Notice, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed by this Abrahamic plan. So it's pretty big. And it's supra-historical, beyond history, beyond culture, beyond the natural world. It's universal, it's global, and it has to do with what is the purpose and destiny of let us make humans in our image and making them dust creatures subject to death and telling them, this is your home. Now, as far as I know, no religion other than the Hebrew faith teaches this. They might use parts of it, they might use a portion of it, they might adapt it in certain ways, they might even use some of the language. But if a Christian student on my campus comes up to me and says, Dr. Tabor, if you were to die tonight, do you know absolutely for certain that you would go to heaven? And then begins to tell me the 4 spiritual laws that I've sinned, that we've all sinned, that we're destined for hell, that Jesus died for our sins and we need to accept him. That's not Abrahamic faith. That's not what Abraham was told. And I think we've got to restore and repair and go back to Abrahamic faith. Now, I haven't heard all of Ross's talk, but like David, I think it was a precursor. It was ahead of me yesterday, but I think it's going to fit in pretty well. And I haven't even heard it. So what is it? Well, it's essentially the Genesis I just gave you of the call of Abraham and his family. The Bible's the story of one man's family. Some of you know Garner Ted Armstrong in the 1960s, bellowing this out to the world on radio and finally television. I was 17 years old when I first heard him. And what did he say? The Bible is the story of one man's history. Maybe he got it from someone else, but it always stuck with me. I thought, that's true. It is. Because you have Genesis and you have the flood, and then you get to chapter 12, which is not very far in. You have 50 chapters, and that's one man's family. So that's pillar number 1, what you get in Genesis. And then Moses at Horeb, the 10 words. That's it. One slogan for this organization, which is supranatural, supraculture, and supra-historical, and universal and global. And one way to describe it is the Decalogue faith for all humankind. The Decalogue faith for all humankind. That locks into the call of Abraham, because remember, Abraham is going to teach his household and his children after him the way of justice and righteousness. What is the way of justice and righteousness? It's laid out at Sinai. It's the Horeb Decalogue faith for all time. And then I add, as amplified by the prophets. And I would include in that the 1,000-year history of ancient Israel, the family. That's the family story. So you've got the family story to read and meditate on in several versions and editing and writing by many authors. But the fundamental thing unfolds the way it unfolds. So in this book, this new version, it's essentially the creator, the way, and the plan. And the plan essentially is Hebraic faith. Um, I'm going to give you a confession that comes from Jonah that I like very much. Jonah's getting ready to die and get shipwrecked and so forth. And he says, I am a Hebrew, and I hold in awe the eternal Elohim of heaven and earth who made all things. I'm a Hebrew. I love that. If people ask me what I am, I like to say, well, I'm a human being. Call me Homo sapien, I guess. I'm dust of the earth. And I could then say I'm an American citizen and I could talk about my family, my culture, my language. But if you want to get to religion, let's get to religion. What's your faith? I'm a Hebrew. I want to cross the Euphrates, so to speak, and I want to lech lecha, to walk before him and live up to my inner being. Now, I'm almost done, believe it or not. It's really simple. Acts 17:27. I'm going to quote the book of Acts, where Paul is talking to Stoics and Epicureans and Pythagoreans in Athens. And I've been to Mars Hill and stood there and thought about this. And I don't know that's a stenographic recording of what he said, but it's a pretty good Hebraic message to the world in terms of what Hebrew faith is. And here it is. The God, that's the Elohim, who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made with hands by man. Get rid of all temples, all sacrifice, anything like that. He doesn't live there. And notice, yet he is not far from each one of us, for in him we live and move and have our being. And before you think, boy, Paul was brilliant, he just summarized Tabor's whole talk in 2 sentences. I need to remind you, that's not Paul. He's quoting 2 Greek poets. And I love that. And we even know who the poets are. We won't go into that now. For we are indeed his offspring. So think about that. That's it. In him we live and move and have our being. And we are his offspring. That's what I said for the last however many minutes I've been talking. So I want to end with hoping you'll read the book it's going to have all kinds of notes and documentation and many more materials. It's going to have the Moses scroll in the back with Ross's translation and notes and all kinds of things. I want it to be a one-stop shop for this Abrahamic faith that we're all kind of yearning for, to fix the world and to fix ourselves and to walk before the Creator and be perfect. And you can start right now in the temple of your own heart. That's all you need. And yes, organizations help, and we need the internet, we need YouTube, and we need all these other things. But what are we trying to communicate? What we're trying to communicate is in him we live and move. Remember, the L of the spirits of all flesh and have our being. And I will close with the words of Moses. Are you ready? Moses scroll, last line. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear and do not be dismayed. For Elohim, your Elohim, he will go before you. And I'm going to say to you, he will go before you. Walk before him and be Tamid. Thanks a lot.